Hello and welcome back. In this lesson, I want to talk about another way that we can greatly increase the efficiency of our code, and that's by externalizing and minimizing our code. Now, when we talk about externalizing our code, what I'm talking about is taking all of our JavaScript out of our HTML pages and putting that JavaScript in a separate JavaScript file, a .js file. And it's very easy to do. You would just take everything inside the script tags, remove it, and then create a new text file with a .js extension, and then you would simply use a script tag to point to that file. So I've got a sample project here, and I'm not going to include this in the project files because there's really no point. I'm just showing you very quickly how you would do this. But you would take everything inside these script tags, like I mentioned before, and let's go ahead and cut that, and then we can get rid of the script tags altogether. And then I'm going to create a new JavaScript file inside my JavaScript folder, and we'll just call it site.js or something like that. And it doesn't matter what text editor you're using. I'm using Visual Studio Code here. You could also use brackets or any other plain text editor, but I'm saving it as site.js, and then I'll just paste all of that code here. Now, it's not going to work just yet because we're not pointing to this JavaScript file in our HTML file yet, but we can jump back over to our index.html. And then after you load all of your dependencies, for example, we've got jQuery here, which is required because I'm using jQuery in my own JavaScript. So we need to make sure that we load jQuery first. And this is also using scroller.js. So after we load those dependencies, then we'll create our own script tag here to load the file that we just created. So it's in our JavaScript folder, js/, and then I called it site.js. And that's really all it takes to externalize your JavaScript. And one of the big benefits of having your JavaScript in a separate file is that you can then very easily minimize or minify that JavaScript code. And when you have a minified version of your code, that minified version is going to run much quicker because it's going to be a smaller file size. It's going to be difficult to read that minified file or to edit that minified file, but that's why you save the original copy of your JavaScript, so that if you need to make changes, you make changes to that original JavaScript file and then re-minify it. Now, how do you minify? Well, there's a number of different ways you can do it. Most modern code editors have plugins that you can get that will minify your JavaScript for you. For example, I'm using Visual Studio Code here, and if we go to our extensions and just do a search for minify, you can see several options here for minifying your code, either CSS or JavaScript or whatever it is. Brackets also has a plugin for minifying code. So this is just another text editor here called Brackets. It's free online, just like Visual Studio Code. And if we go to the extension manager for Brackets and do a search for minify, here you'll see a JavaScript minifier. And you can always click on more info to see how those work and how you would go through and minify those. But again, that's just another extension that you have available for you. Now keep in mind that after you minify your code, let's jump back into Visual Studio Code here. After you minify it, you need to change the file that you're pointing to here. So if you minified site.js, then you would have a new version probably called site.min.js. And so here in your HTML, you would want to point to that minified version instead of the original version of your code. Otherwise, all of that minification is pointless. So those are a couple of ways you can minify. If for some reason you just like using Notepad to do all of your code editing, you can still minify. And one way you can do that is by going to websites like JS Compress. And you can find that at jscompress.com. And basically this just allows you to paste your code and then click on the compress button. And you'll see that this compressed our code by 74%. So this is just a very small chunk of JavaScript here. You can imagine that if you had a lot of JavaScript on your page, that this would really save you a lot of file size. And when you've got a high traffic website, that's really going to help out a lot. Now, another benefit of externalizing and minifying your JavaScript is that it allows you to handle caching a little bit better. Let's say, for example, that you have a chunk of JavaScript code that you're going to be using on several different pages on your website. Well, it would make sense to put that little chunk of JavaScript code in its own JavaScript file so that once your user visits it once, it's already cached in their browser. So when they visit another page that's pointing to the same JavaScript file, it doesn't have to load that JavaScript again. It's already loaded it once. So that will reduce the number of requests that are made for that particular piece of JavaScript. And then if you want to take this to the next level, you can use a CDN or a content delivery network to store your JavaScript files. And what a CDN does for you is it stores versions of your JavaScript file in geographically diverse locations. So you might have your JavaScript stored in servers all over the world. And the benefit to that is that if you've created your website in Texas and somebody in the UK wants to access your website, then without a CDN, that user would have to connect to your server wherever it is in order to get all of the files they need. But if your JavaScript is in a CDN, then chances are there will be a version of that JavaScript file on a server either in the UK or somewhere in Europe or something like that. So it would be much closer to that user's location, which means it would download quicker and run smoother. Now keep in mind that a CDN does cost money, so it's not a free option. So that's really only something you want to pursue if you're ready for that next level, but it really can help to speed up your website. So again, those are just a couple of ways that you can help your website run more efficiently by externalizing your JavaScript and minifying it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.